גם מדהים אותי.
You see, I'm not dealing with law, unfortunately. I don't know. But all my life, I spent with the economists. So they tell me that I am... They tell me that I am not exactly economist, because I went from economics to the history of economic thought. That is what people thought about economics, about economy, and about money. And so when I read the great paper by Professor Safra, I thought that I can really focus here on something that I think I know, and it relates also to a major point in the paper, and this is the role of the public authority in really shaping the money, creating the money, introducing it to society, and hence create the market in a way. That's how it is described. This is not the economist perception, as is written in the paper, and it is well known. The economists believe in barter as the model type, from which money rose, and hence it's a completely different approach, theoretically at least. It is the paper, the last in a long list of publications dealing with these issues. And in fact, they deal it with what the economists also used to call the dichotomy. That is between the real and the non-real. The non-real can be just money, or money and credit, or money and credit and the whole financial system. So I will go to the fundamental question, which is really the claim, the argument, that the public authority is necessary for the process of money creation to take place. And in the paper, as you just heard, the green belts are the example kind of anchor for the argument. I want to take you a little bit backwards from the mid-19th century in the US, with the Civil War and everything that happened, and the crisis and the monetary crisis, and I will take you back a little bit towards David Hume and Adam Smith, which you all know. This is not comfortable to the men. These two were the most influential figures. Their theories played a big role in the 19th century for a long time. And they both argued that convertibility to gold, that is gold, is the corner, the anchor for the monetary system. And I want not talk about these two, it is well known. And we'll talk a little bit more about a less known figure, but a very important one, in my view, not only my view. In monetary theory, he was the brightest and cleverest and most influential. His name, Henry Thornton. And the fact that I want to go back to him is that he wrote about a situation of crisis in war, and most importantly from our point of view, about the fact that the system became not based on gold, it became inconvertible. Inconvertible meaning that the notes were not convertible to gold as it was before the crisis and before the war, before 1907 when it happened. I will tell you a little bit about what Thornton discussed with this inconvertible system, and it is very interesting for us because the system is inconvertible for 50 years now, next year or something like this. the international system, the American system, no gold. The gold was also less important before, maybe, but the analytical structure was still good. I'm using here an old book of mine, like old, I mean 12 years. Monetary Theory and Policy from Human Smith to Excel. On Excel I will not talk today. And also I cannot avoid talking a little bit, I will come back to him, about John Hicks, a famous economist, a clever economist, who studied very carefully the history of money and banking as well, and had many interesting ideas about exactly these issues, whether they should be resolved with a central authority or public authority, or in a decentralized market competition method. So anyway, he realized that monetary disturbances, crisis, shaped really the way we think about these issues. So one word I have to tell you, so that we will all understand about the structure of the economy. I cannot do justice to this issue, but there are three different kinds of banks in the UK, I call it, in this time. The Bank of England, who issued notes, and up to 1797, these notes were convertible. That is, you can exchange them for gold in a certain rate that we will not talk about today. There were private banks in London, few, not quite many, who did not issue notes. They were not allowed. There was a rule, a law, constitution, not issuing notes. And there were many country banks in the country, around the UK, who issued notes. So there were hundreds of different notes issued by Bank Smith, by Bank Sheffield, and the Bank of England notes, who became the norm, if you want, or people could exchange their notes for them. So you can see that it is a complicated system, very complicated system. Your paper is hanging on a little bit on the crisis that we just described in 1863. This is the 97 crisis. There is a debate taking place immediately after the decision to go into the restriction, they call it, because they restricted the payment of notes for gold. You couldn't get gold for the notes you have, and this debate is known as the anti-Bullionist versus Bullionist debate, and I will not talk about it a lot because I don't have time. Henry Thornton wrote this great book, only book in economics. He was interested more in religion and theology, and he was a banker, so he knew what he was talking about. He was a very well-known banker. And this is an inquiry into the nature and effect of the paper credit of Great Britain, 1802, 5 years after it started. Because when it started, this new system, you can imagine that people were not sure that what will be the money of the economy after it is inconvertible. Maybe people will not trust it, will not accept it, will not use it. What will they use? This was an open question, and after 4 years, first there was stability and people used the old notes, though they were not convertible anymore, to the surprise of many. Then inflation erupted in 1801-2 and caused a crisis, and people started thinking about the system theoretically. That's what Hicks tells us. You have a good crisis, people start to think. Not in the recent crisis, unfortunately. This is the man, this is the book. You can find it in any reissued, and I will tell you more in a minute. And I will talk very briefly, because I don't have time, I guess. Okay. Because I have
12:30.
Yes, I know. I will not talk to 12:30, don't worry. What were the important contributions of this genius? Genius in terms of economics. Defend the feasibility of a system without gold as its anchor. He thought it is possible to work with this system. We know it is possible because we are in this system. They were not, and he said so very clearly. Explained the importance of debts and credits. That is what we call IOUs in the system as the basic structure of the system, very clearly, not in good language, hard to read, but very clearly in terms of thinking. Explained that a convertible as well as inconvertible system that is based on gold or not required management by a central body, authority, government, call it what you want. He thought about the Bank of England, but it was more general. That is a very early argument in favor of central banking, 100 years more or less before the economy started to understand it properly. So this is amazing, and argued that, okay, I said that this, the Bank of England, just to remind everybody, was a private institution, joint stock bank, you know, it's not government bank, it's not ruled by the government. Although in 1797, when the war broke out and the system was under threat, the government interfered and said notes are not convertible anymore. So you can say they were there, but they were not really the bank. I want to run a little bit. I have to run a little bit. So we talked about modern policy before everybody else. And he had some things to say about, these are the two guys that you saw already. And I want to emphasize that they thought about convertibility, both for you and for Smith and for the many, many others who followed their theories in the 19th century. It was gold, and that's it. And no interventions in the monetary system. The system will manage itself, you know, free markets, competition, and all the rest. But nothing to be done by anybody. Paper credit, I will not read you. Gold is by no means that kind of circulating medium which is the most desirable. This is Thornton. And he explains it. I don't have the time, and I don't want to. I send you to page 2076 there, and you can read it. In her paper, Professor Sedan emphasizes the role of the sovereign in establishing money and generating the market. The context is, of course, another crisis, as we saw, and she writes, just to make it clear, what then of gold coin and the prices that people charge in it? For critics, both then and later, the greenback was a knockoff at best an imitation of money that, given its lesser status, traveled with lower value. In fact, specie coin and paper money were each public credit forms. The first carried metal collateral, while the second relied solely on a governmental commitment to honoring. Which reminds us of the restriction early years, I would say, but it also raises the question of why people use money. They use money, they accept money for the goods they sell, because they believe that they can use this money that they receive in future date, unknown usually, and will not lose value. This is the belief. So this takes us immediately to the question of prices, from the point of view of an economist, and rightly so, I think. That is, the purchasing power of the note is the thing that you want to preserve. And that is not in the authority of the authorities to do. It is the outcome of many markets and price levels and indexes, etc., that they were not so well known at the time, of course. We know very well. So it takes me back to the main issue. Inconvertible to gold and inconvertibility. Inconvertibility, which is the system we live in, hangs on many things, including the authority that is emphasized, but also on the methods that the authority cannot always control, but maybe indirectly, to keep the value of the inconvertible notes. Why did they believe in gold? They believed in gold because they thought explicitly, implicitly, that it is stable. For a long time, they thought that silver and gold are stable in value. There was no good rationale for this. It was not a theoretical explanation. It was based on the conventions of the people who thought that in this case, okay, so then now I have to, and it depends on expectations. I want to cut it a bit. Yes. I will not talk about all these people now. I will convince you that they knew, that Thornton knew, and this quotation is really the only one I will continue to. A non-convertible paper, which is limited and is in full credit, may be maintained its price just as it is as if it were convertible. Okay, so this is the argument. Ricardo knew very well, turned to another famous classical economist, very well Thornton, and they argued with him. They did not agree. Thornton rejected both Smith, both Hume and Ricardo, monetary theories. Clearly so. Hicks writes here a little bit about Thornton. Thornton was brought back to the economist by Hayek. Hayek was responsible for reintroducing the volume. Thornton, in fact, disappeared from the literature. He was not mentioned from the 70s, more or less, till the 30s. When his book was republished in 1939, with a famous introduction by Hayek, and he mentions here Keynes, but the route Thornton followed, this is Hicks. In his analysis, though it resulted in classical conclusions, I don't agree with this, incorporated some of the chief things which Keynes, 130 years later, was to rediscover. It is true that a lot of Keynes can be found in Thornton's writings, but I will stop here. I want to add just I think these are the last 2 points. One is that there is a distinction in the history of thought between monetary theories of credit, that is, you start from money, let's say from gold, and then you build on this the understanding of credit and how it works, etc., etc. And there is another approach, totally different. You start from credit as the basic, fundamental relationship in the monetary sphere, and you draw from here the money. This distinction is famous in Schumpeter's great history of economic analysis. And I will not go into it, just say that it is relevant for this as well. Now, the lessons from hyperinflations are very important here as well. Why? Because if we believe that the use of money depends on its stability in terms of value, then if hyperinflation enters the scene, it ruins, as we know it happened, the existence of money. Hence the understanding of inflation. The crucial issue is that economists theoretically don't understand very well inflation. And surprisingly, they will say that I'm wrong. And I'm happy to be in a minority view with them on many things, including this. But they don't really explain well, certainly not low inflations, as they call them, and certainly not hyperinflations. The point is that when they hit those interesting and important issues, they use their hands, not their heads. And that's what we see. There may be some lessons for today which I can skip because I'm not sure that I can really add much to my commentary on this great paper. And here, this is the end of the story. Sorry for taking so much.
Thank you.